Alright, so now we're on to the modeling portion of things. Okay. So, if you haven't already, open up Wings. And before I get modeling the torch we're going to create, I'll just do a very, very quick overview of Wings. If you can, just kind of experiment yourself, figure out what some of the different functions do. But I'll just do the very extreme basics. So Wings operates, everything's kind of done on a right click, and it's all contextual. So if you have nothing and you right click, you'll be given these options: create cylinder, cube, blah blah blah. If you have an object, you right click on an edge, for example, you get all your options for edges. If you right click on a vertice, you have your options for vertices. Some of them are similar, and then the same with the face. And you can choose to select the whole object and do options on there as well. So each mode has different options when you right click. And in addition to that, there's also different things you can do. So for example, there's a bridge function, and if I select two faces and I choose actually we'll do the whole one, yeah, that would make more sense. If I select two faces with the hole and I left click on it, I have a hole in the mesh. But let's say that I already had a hole in the mesh and I want to fix that. I can choose to right click on it instead, and now the hole's fixed. So some of the buttons do different things depending on left or right or even middle click. Some of them do contextual things, so like that bridge option I was talking about earlier. If I do bridge right now, I have two faces, so it's going to create a tunnel. But if I were to select these two and I was to choose bridge, then it'll actually bridge it. So that'll just be contextual. It's left click, but it just bases it on the scenario. But the basic workflow is left click on what you want to change, right click and choose the operation you want to change on it. Middle click is what rotates view, and scroll in and out. It's pretty intuitive. So I want to keep this fairly short, so we will move on to creating the torch now. And before we go any further, I'm actually going to start with a reference picture. I've already had one ready. This is what we're going to base it off, and it's not going to look exactly like this. In fact, it won't look very close to this, but this is to kind of give me an idea of where to start and what the general idea of the object I'm creating is. And that's usually a useful thing, is to have reference pictures ready before you create the model. Instead of just trying to create it all from your head, it's just pretty helpful, and it'll give you new ideas. It'll help you keep on track and figure out where to go next. Now, first thing I see when looking at this reference picture is this thing is basically a big long cylinder, if you were to break it down into one basic shape. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start with a cylinder. That's a pretty fat cylinder, so I'm going to scale that upwards, just like that. We'll go pretty high, and so now we have kind of the height of a torch. I'm going to select the whole thing by pressing one edge and then kind of dragging the select box across the whole thing. I'm going to right click and choose cut, just cut it in half, so two edges. Then I'm going to press the C button, and that's going to connect to all the different vertices. Now I'm going to move that upwards, just like that. There we go. And then at the top here, now that I have kind of a little bit at the top here, I'm going to choose Scale Uniform. And already you can see where I'm going with this. I'm also going to move that up just a little. There we go. And then I'm going to do what I did before to do that cut, except I'm going to select up here, one edge, drag the box across, choose cut, cut it in half again, and press C again, and now I have another area to work with there. I'm going to move that down, and for now I'm happy with that. Now we have our torch here. I'm actually, you know what, I'm actually going to make this just a little bit bigger. There, I can work with that. Now I'm going to choose an option called extrude. And I'm going to extrude it upwards on the y-axis. There we go. Excuse me. And now I have kind of the walls of where this bowl is going to be. Now I want to create the bowl. So I am going to choose an option called inset. And inset, now that you can see what I'm doing, that's pretty self-explanatory. It insets a new face inside the existing one. And we'll do about that thickness. And then I'm going to do it one more time. And now, this new face that I've just created, I can move downwards. And look at that, I have a bowl. Let me make sure that doesn't clip to the outside. No, it doesn't. I'm going to use that inset again. To about, yeah, we'll do there. Move downwards one more time. Now we have a more of that slope, so it's more of a bowl shape. And finally, one more time. Exact same motions. And there we go. That is a bowl. Alright, where are we so far? Now we want the outside cages. So here we have these outside ridges of metal coming up, and that's what we want to create now. Since I started with a cylinder, I have these faces already created, and I'm actually just going to use that. I'm going to create more bits going upwards than the reference picture had, just because I'm lazy and this is the quickest way to do it. And I'm going to go upwards 4 times using the same thing. Extrude. Actually, I don't want to extrude from normal. I want to extrude upwards. So 1. We'll do that again. 2. About there. Yep. 3. And 4. And why I did that is going to become apparent in just a moment. Alright, now we'll have these top bits selected. I'm going to choose Scale Uniform with the faces selected, and that is going to scale them all inwards just a bit. So they kind of slope inwards now. Now I'm going to change that over to points, and this time when I choose Scale Uniform, it scales it inwards towards the object, just like that. And this is already an interesting sort of shape, but we can make it a little bit more interesting. So I'm going to go back to face selection mode. I'm going to pick the tops of all of these, just like that, and I'm going to extrude upwards again. Now that isn't particularly amazing looking at the moment, but that's okay. We'll do the same thing, Scale Uniform like this. So we're going in a bit, and then we're going to switch over to points and Scale Uniform again. Not quite as much as before. And now we have that sort of shape. So now this is already becoming a bit more recognizable as a torch. Now I want to create the the ring that's around the inside. So that is this little bit right here. I'm only going to create one of them, and it's going to be attached to the inside. So to do that, this is where those 4 times extruding upwards comes into play. Now I have a face here that I can work with. I'm going to select all of them, all of these faces that I've just created, and there we go. I'm going to extrude inwards, and to do that I'm going to do extrude normal. So if I did extrude, say X for example, it's going to do that. If I did extrude by Z, it's going to go this way, but I want it to move inwards towards the center, so when I extrude by normal, it moves towards the direction each face was pointing, just like that, which is perfect. But this isn't quite a ring, this is just a bunch of little divots or whatever. However, that bridge tool that I mentioned earlier, that's where this comes into play. I'm going to select these 2 faces, and I'm going to choose bridge, and suddenly, there we go, it's one piece. I'm going to do the exact same thing all around. Unfortunately, I can't do this all at once. I can't select all the faces. For some reason, Wings doesn't like that. It'll only accept 2 faces selected. So I have to do this manually, one by one, but you know, there's not too many, so it's not going to be the end of the world. There we go. Just a few more to go. Excuse me. And I think this is the last one, right? Yes, it is. All right. Now we have a ring. But in the picture there, these parts weren't organically coming out of the bowl. They're actually attached to the outside of the bowl. So that's what I want to do next, is make these things appear like they're attached to the outside of the bowl. While I'm at it, I'm also going to modify this just a little bit, because now that I have more of the shape created, I can see this doesn't look exactly the way I want. I want this to come up a bit. Just a bit. There we go. And let's see what it looks like. I don't know, it's just little tweaks, but it's this rough edge that I don't like. Actually, you know what? This needs to be a little wider. That's what needs to happen. So I'm going to scale that outwards. That looks a bit more natural. Okay. Now, like I said, we're going to select the faces and create an outwards edge. If you don't know what I'm talking about, that'll make sense in just a moment. But you can kind of already see where I'm going based on how I did the inner rings. We're going to use that extrude from normal again to bring these all out just a little bit to create a bit of a ridge. I'm not selecting all the way down to the bottom. I want it to kind of look like they're just hammered onto the side of the bowl. I'm also not bothering creating too much detail, no bolts, nothing like that. It's going to be a pretty low poly object. And whenever possible, I don't want to add too much detail to stuff that doesn't matter. Because in a game, performance matters. Alright, I'm going to do extrude, normal. We'll bring it out just that little bit. There we go. And we have our ridges. Now, at the top here, I have a bit more of a flat shape that kind of divots upwards. I don't like that. So I'm just going to delete these two, and that makes it face inwards like that. And I like that look a lot better. So I'm going to do the exact same thing all around the top. I do apologize if I'm moving a little fast. I just don't want to make this tutorial very long-winded, as it's already going to be long enough as it is. There we go. And let's just have a look. Okay, something went wrong on that fella there. Oh, that's because I already did him. There we go. There, that's much better. Now it kind of joins up. Where are we? Alright, we have ridges around the sides. We have the ring in the middle. I think it's time to shape our handle. So right at the bottom here, right now we just have this boring tube. And that's not amazing. However, we can fix that. So we're going to lay the groundwork for a couple of things here. So I'm going to cut it, and let's see how many times do I want to cut it. I want to cut it 4 times, I believe. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. And then I'm going to scale this so these ones are closer together. And actually, while I'm thinking about it, I'm going to press C2 so that they're all connected to each other. Maybe a little bit more. Then this guy's going all the way at the bottom. And this one will make sense in just a moment. Oh, did not want to do that. Okay. And now I'm going to scale this all. I'm going to choose scale uniform. I'm going to scale this all inwards just a little bit. And while I'm at it, I'm also going to scale the whole torch inwards a bit, because I think, let's make sure nothing else is selected, I think this handle is still just a bit too thick. So scale uniform. We're going to move that up again. Yeah, that's all right. And I'm also going to stretch this out now a bit, because we've shortened it a bit more than I want. Okay. I'm going to move that up a little. And then I'm going to scale this down a bit as well. And now we have a gradually thinning piece of wood. Right at the bottom here, the reason I added this extra edge is because now when I select this and I scale it, right at the bottom of the wood, it just tapers off. So that's perfect. And the reason I have this here is because we want to create a handle. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is select all of this. There we go. And I'm going to extrude that outwards by its normal. Now we have a little handle bit here. That is what I wanted to do. That makes a bit more sense. And now we'll extrude outwards. There we go. That's a bit closer to what I wanted. And now I believe if I delete that, okay, it still does that, but if I do it this way, let's see. Yep, and then I do that. Now we have the geometry I was looking for. So I'm recording this a little late at night, and I'm forgetting some of the steps I used. But there we go. That's what I wanted originally. All right, now we have a handle. We have the part that's holding it. We need a back plate. Also, I'm actually gonna select this and make it just a little wider. I want it to be more of a square and less of a thin 2x4 sort of shape. Oh, don't want to do that. Move downwards. There we go. That's better. Okay. Oh, back you go. Back you go. There we go. That's too far. There we are. Just a bit more square. Alright, so to create the back plate, I'm going to select this face, extrude outwards to about there, and then I'm going to select all these outside bits and extrude by normal, and ta-da, I've got a back plate. Doesn't quite look the way I want it yet, but that's fixable. I can scale by just one axis, in this case let's say Z, and okay, that isn't, oh, I see what's going on here. Okay, because I've created this at a bit of a rotation, it's not going to scale perfectly that way. Okay, that's fine. I can fix that pretty easily. We'll just select this, go up here, and I'll just manually rotate it. Rotate it free on the y-axis, and that roughly appears to line up. I could actually rotate it with another button here. So while I go to rotate, I press Tab, and then I can put in a manual amount. That actually might give me a more exact result, so I'll do that instead. We'll do 15. There we go. That was a little too much. Let's try 12. Educated guess. That might have been bang on the money. There we go. Wings does everything on exact axes. So if I choose to scale by the x-axis, or the z-axis, it's going to do the exact one, not the one relative to the way the model's rotated. So now if I choose to scale it, it should, yeah, now it will go in perfectly just like that. Alright, now we have a back plate. I can clean up some of the geometry on the back here. We have a holder, we have a torch that's tapering down. There isn't really too much left to do. I'm going to select all of these and I'm going to do a bevel. Now I could add a lot more details here, but I really don't want to. Like I said, this isn't a very important object. It's not going to be looked at too closely, and I don't need to waste memory on it. So if I choose the bevel option, it's to round off edges of selected faces, it's going to do that. Now it looks like I have more of a bar going in rather than a flat piece. And now there we have it. It's pretty much a torch. There's a couple of tweaks I want to make. So first I'm going to select all of this, make sure I get everything, and I'm going to move it upwards. Just like, okay, hang on a second. We need to get these pieces too. There we go. Okay, I'm going to move that upwards. So that the torch is kind of coming down at a bit of an angle. And to match that, I'm now going to, well, in a moment I will select and rotate this torch forward, but actually before I do that, I'm going to quickly do one more thing here. Earlier we extruded this outwards, and that actually left some faces here that I feel don't really need to be in the model. Now I could just leave these here, you wouldn't really be able to tell the difference, but I like to clean things up a little. If they don't need to be there, even in a low poly object such as this, we may as well delete them. So I'm just gonna delete all these inside edges here, and when I press delete, on the outside of the model there's not going to be any visible change because these added absolutely nothing to the overall shape of the object. They were completely useless. So we're going to add that, delete that, there we go. Just about done. There we are. I'm going to press delete, and the geometry changes in how the model's actually created with triangles and different faces, but the outside look of the model remains the exact same. Let's have a look here. This is pretty much the entire object. All that remains is to bend this thing forward a little bit. So I'm going to select all, oh, we need faces there, there we go. And I want to select everything except that bar and the back plate. So that looks about right. I'm going to choose rotate, rotate by the z-axis or z-axis, and we'll just rotate it forward like that. And now that I have that there, and I see how it goes in, I'll make a couple more tweaks. I'll make this back plate a little bit bigger, so it makes more sense supporting the weight of this. So we'll do that. We'll scale it that way, so a bit bigger of a back plate. But for the most part, this is a finished model. I might make some tweaks, make some changes after I'm done shooting the video, but this is pretty much it. This is the kit and caboodle. So that'll be it for making the model. The next video will be about the not so fun task of slapping a texture onto it.